YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back. In today's video, I got some secondary rankings for the upcoming 2019 season. So basically, we're going through all 32 NFL teams, ranking them worst to first by their secondaries or defensive back units. So what goes into this? Corners and safeties, obviously, and then obviously slot corners, box safeties, and any rotation players that can make an impact. So basically, any DBs that make an impact or have a role for these teams. So going worst to first, and if a player is suspended or hurt, that kind of counts towards it. So teams kind of take a hit for that because this is for the 2019 season. We did the same video for wide receiver cores, pass rush cores, plenty of videos on the channel, plenty more to come, and we'll have full NFL coverage during the season. Hopefully you can join us for that. Hopefully you can subscribe, turn the notifications on, click the like button. But for in-season, recaps every single week, power rankings updated every single week, predictions, score predictions, college football picks, which already started. So a lot to get to. Can't wait. Hopefully you can join us. Let's start at the bottom here, these DB unit rankings. So last place, 32nd, going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A lot of young talent, a lot of young players on that team, and I think they're heading in the right direction. You know, I like the corners for the future. Sean, Bunting was one of my favorite. If you remember, he was one of my favorite players in the draft. So I like that pick. I think he's got a future. Doesn't mean he's going to be a Pro Bowler right away or anything. It was weird because they drafted a few corners last year in Carlton Davis and MJ Stewart, and then this year do the same thing, get a few other guys in there. So a little bit of a battle going on. I think this could be Hargraves last year. He could be on his way out. I think Bunting and Carlton Davis outside is what I'm thinking. And safety's very, very rough, though. And there's a reason they brought in Darian Stewart pretty late here, and he might get the starting job. I think Jordan Whitehead has some upside. Evans hasn't really worked out too much yet. It's a team that surrenders a lot of pass yards, so there's a reason they're at the bottom. I think they're heading in the right direction, but for now, for 2019, that's where they're at. Panthers, similar situation. Got some young talent in there. Dante Jackson, I like him a lot. Opposite him is Bradbury. Not a huge fan, but, I mean, he can play. And at safety, Eric Reed was solid last year. We'll see if he can continue to play at that level. Nothing spectacular. I like Rashawn Golden. I like his potential. We'll see if they play him a lot, but not much in that Panthers secondary. So that's why they're at the bottom. The Giants, similar situation. Lots of young players. They're heading in the right direction. DeAndre Baker, Julian Love could be a pretty darn good duo of the future. Oh, and don't forget about Sam Beal, who they just got in the supplement draft last year, but got hurt. He's got some upside to him. Peppers at safety, but they at safety, just not a. They're young, just not a whole bunch of talent for this year. I think they'll give up a lot of pass yards. The Cardinals at 29, Patrick Peterson being out for some games hurts them for sure. I wasn't pleased with Budda Baker's play last year. I thought it would be much, much better. A little disappointing, but he's still young, could still get better. I've never been a DJ Swearinger fan. Misses a lot of tackles. Is just constantly putting his head down, trying to hit people as hard as he can, and sometimes he makes a big hit, sometimes he whiffs. Pretty bad angles too. And not really a center fielder, not really good deep downfield. I don't know. I'm never really believed in the hype for him. Not really sure where that's coming from. And then the corners, some young ones. I like where they're heading. Byron Murphy could be solid. He's not going to be anything spectacular right away. They need Patrick Peterson for this group to be better than 29, in my opinion. The Chiefs at 28. The corners are really bringing them down. I think Juan Thornhill could, either if he's starting safety or playing in the box, I think he's playing a lot, basically a starter. And then, Thornhill and Matthew, obviously. I think the safeties keep them up, but then the corners, they might have the worst corner group in the league, so that really brings them down there. I'm not a huge Breeland fan. Fuller, I think, is better in the slot. Not much going there for the corners, so, that's why they're at 28. 27, the Steelers. Not a huge fan of the secondary either. I think they got some guys that can get better. Hayden's solid. He's a veteran. He's not getting any better. He could be declining a little bit. The safeties, guys like Edmonds, those guys can get better. Never been a fan of Artie Burns. Didn't like that pick at the time. Sean Davis is, decent. It's just a bunch of decent players. I think in the secondary, they play better than you expect because the front seven is very good. But this is just talking about the secondaries. 26, the Raiders, another team heading in the right direction. A couple young players in there. Signed LaMarcus Joyner, too, who actually could play. Originally a safety, could play in the slot. I'm still really not 100% sure what they're going to do. I thought they were going to, because it feels like they have two kind of box safeties at safety, and Abrams and Jonathan Abram and Carl Joseph, of course. Two guys that I feel like they're box safeties, and they can play. I like Jonathan Abram a lot. He's got a bright future, so I thought they would keep Joyner at safety, but it sounds like he's going to play in the slot. They got good depth and rotation at corner, but really no standout guy. I think Conley's on his way to being that. I think it's just being young is what keeps him back here, but definitely heading in the right direction. And the Niners at 25, the safety group really brings them down. It could be the worst safety group, and they're right there with the Panthers and the Bucs for possible worst safety group in football. But the corners lifts them back up. Richard Sherman, Akello Witherspoon, Jason Verrett if he can stay healthy. So a pretty good group there. A few other guys, a pretty good group that really brings them up. So if you look at the corners, you would think much, much better than 25, which is 100% accurate. But the safeties and then really, the depth at safety brings them down too. So, it brings them down to 25. We're looking at the next 8, 24, then up to 17. Number 24 is the Colts. I think pretty balanced for the most part, but for outside corner, I think that's where their weakness is. Desir played pretty solid last year. Are we going to get the same thing? Are we going to get consistency from these guys? Quincy Wilson, I need to step up. Kenny Moore is actually currently hurt, but supposed to be good by week 1. I trust him in the slot. The safety group, it's mainly just Malik Hooker, and he needs to stay healthy. He needs to stay on the field. So we got a back and forth in this team. It's kind of balanced. Are we going to get the same kind of performance, though? Are the guys going to stay healthy? There's pieces here and there. I got them at 24. 23 is the Redskins. They get Landon Collins in there. I've never been a really big Landon Collins fan in terms, there's some people out there that think he's a top-tier safety. That's not me, but I do think he's a good safety, and they for sure got better there. At corner, I think Norman's on the decline. Fabian Moreau could be on the up. Greg Stroman, I liked him in the draft a year ago. He's a guy that can, he's not a starter, but can play in the slot, play outside. So for the Redskins there, a couple young guys, they got a little better, but they will surrender some pass yards. The Eagles at 22, another team that was towards the bottom of the NFL in pass yards allowed last year, were pretty beat up. I wouldn't say they have any holes. There's not any guys that are like a big time weak spot, but they don't have any big strengths. I like the potential of Sidney Jones. Hopefully he can get it together. They have a few. Malcolm Jenkins is. He's not the superstar he once was, so I guess but he's still the top tier guy in that group. So I guess they do have a good guy there, but Sendejo could play a little bit. They picked him up from the Vikings. Maddox looked pretty good, but I think he's just better in the slot. They had him playing outside corner because of the injuries last year. They got a bunch of young guys. It's just, you can throw on the Eagles. That's just what it is, and can they stay healthy? I like Darby too, but yeah, Darby's probably their best corner, but can he stay healthy? That's the question. The Jets at 21, the corner group really bringing them down, but the safety group, one of the better duos in football, that brings them way up here. But the corners are pretty bad, but Tremaine Johnson, I think, can be good. He was a letdown last season. I'm not giving up on him yet. So I think they got a pretty good trio over there, but in general, the corners, not so good. So, and I think the corner's a little more important than the safety position. 20 is the Cowboys. They have a big-time weakness at safety. I think one of the, towards the bottom of the league in terms of the safety group. Pretty solid corners, though. Byron Jones, Chidobe Awuzie. They got Jordan Lewis. They got quite a few guys that can play there. I really like Awuzie. I like his potential for the Cowboys. So the corners bring them up a little bit. Saints at 19. Yeah, no standout guy here. I know a lot of people like Lattimore. I'm not a huge Lattimore fan. He could be a playmaker at times, though. And they have him. Howell Appleby. He actually was pretty impressive when they brought him in. Can he continue to do that? Marcus Williams has some potential. Kind of hot or cold for him, though. And they drafted Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who I like, can make a name for himself in this defense pretty early on here. Von Bell, too, they have some names. It's just, you can throw on the Saints, I believe, but they're at 19 because of their playmaking ability. 18, Detroit Lions. Darius Slay carries this corner group, in my opinion. After him, they're really lacking in the corner department. They bring in Justin Coleman. He's had one really solid year. That was with Seattle. Seattle, it's a really good unit over there, so we'll talk about them in a little bit. So I don't know if Coleman can play as good as he did last year. And then safeties, I like their safeties. Pretty good depth. I expect Walker and Diggs to start. It's a pretty good duo and pretty good depth. But they could get better at corner, but what kind of helps them, brings them up a little bit is they got a top-tier corner in Darius Slay. Texans at 17, I think balance for them. Jonathan Joseph. They bring in Bradley Roby. I like that signing, but, how much of an impact is he going to make? And then Deshaun Gibson they bring in as well. That could help them a bit. And Justin Reed has a bright future. So really no big-time weak spots. Not the best depth, but that'll bring them. That'll be enough to bring them at 17. We're on to 16 to 9. 16 is the Bengals, a team that was towards the very bottom, really in pass yards allowed. I think they got a big step up coming. I really think they do. A lot of youth on this team, a lot of young players. Jesse Bates, I think, is on his way to being one of the better safeties in football. So I think he played fine last year, but I think he can even step up. And then a few young corners, William Jackson, I think, steps up too. And Denard, I think he can play as well. And they got a few. Kirkpatrick, I think, can play. He hasn't really lived up to the hype, but quite a few DBs that can play. Jesse Bates, I'm just really looking for. I think he's a guy on his way up to being an elite safety. I think he really can put him back there by himself, and that's why I liked him coming out of Wake Forest a lot too. He's a true center field safety, playmaking safety. Falcons at 15, similar situation. Gave up some yards last year, but I think improvement. They get Keanu Neal back, Isaiah Oliver in his second year, good lengthy corner. So KZ too, that he's able to move in the slot to corner to safety. So he's a good playmaker out there as well. I think, and then they got Trufant, of course, at corner. So I think it's a pretty balanced group. It's got to stay consistent. 1 week they look really good. 1 week they're giving up all kinds of yards. So they got to stay consistent. Seattle Seahawks at 14. The Seahawks is a perfect definition of a unit, a really good unit here, because they don't really have any standout guys. There's really not. Who's the best defensive back in that group? It could be Trey Flowers. It could be Bradley McDougald. Really no big-time guy, but they got balance because they got Griffin. They got Tedrick Thompson. Delano Hill's a good depth guy. They got a number of guys that can fill in and rotate in. So I like this unit, but something that really stands out when you watch them play is they play as a unit. I've never seen so much help defense in today's NFL, help in the secondary, double teams, triple teams. Just really, it's never one guy. The bright moments in the secondary isn't really just one guy. It happens here and there, but look at all their other teams. It's usually just one guy making a really good play. There's always help in this secondary, and a lot of credit to the coaches there. So that is why I like this unit. The Jags at 13, the best corner duo in football, but then the safeties bring them down. The safeties are definitely not where they used to be. Ronnie Harrison has some potential. He can come up and hit. Sometimes I noticed he was only a rookie, so it's expected, but got lost in the deep passing game a bit. They definitely can use another safety or two back there, and they really don't have any rotation guys for corner. It's really the two guys. Nobody for the slot, really, in my opinion. So they're at 13 because they have the best corner duo. Everything else is kind of weighing them down a little bit. I guess that's why it drops them to 13. The Packers at 12, very good balance right now. I think it's going to be more, known more for big-time players in the future. But right now, it's kind of balanced, no holes. You look at the youth at the corner position. You look at Jair Alexander and Josh Jackson and Kevin King. That's a really good trio. Alexander and Jackson, who I liked a lot from last year's draft, that is going to be a really good duo of the future. They're still going to have their moments where they're not great, but they're on their way to maybe being the best, young cornerback group of the NFL in the future, I guess. And the safety, you could say the same thing too. It just depends on which Amos is going to show up. Savage, you can't expect like Pro Bowl level right away, but he has a lot of potential with his athleticism. But still, even with the youth, and they'll have their youth moments, there's still, there's no weak spot in that secondary. So balance right now for the Packers. Nate coming in at number 12. Number 11 is going to be the Chargers, and then Derwin James being hurt drops them down. He's going to miss 3 to 4 months. That could be the whole regular season, really. It depends on what situation they're in and how they're feeling then. So you never know. I think most of the time the guy actually is held out in that situation, that type of situation. The guy's really held out till it's playoff time, and they'll make a decision if they're in the playoffs, and they'll make a decision then. That's usually how it goes. But They take a hit because of that, because I don't like the safety group. Nasir Adderley could be a guy that steps up. I'm not a huge fan of the safety group, though. I like the corners, mainly Casey Hayward outside and then Desmond King in the slot. So, I mean, I know it's the Patriots. You saw what the Patriots did in the playoffs. That could happen from time to time in their secondary. So, with Derwin James, they're definitely higher in this, so it drops them down a bit. Cleveland Browns at number 10. We'll see how Denzel Ward, if he can continue to play the way he did in his rookie season. And then you have Greedy Williams, who could struggle as a rookie. He's my number 1 corner, but, I mean, the rookie corners usually struggle. It's a very hard position to play. So you can't expect too much from the rookie corners. If it's like tight end or running back, I expect some things from those guys. But in offensive line, some of the offensive linemen. But corner's a very hard position to figure out right away. So you can't expect greatness out there, but I do have them in the top 10. I do like TJ Carey in the slot as well. And their safeties are solid with Burnett and Randall. But yeah, the playmaking ability is what puts them in the top 10. Number 9 is the Buffalo Bills. One of the best safety duos, as you can see on the screen, Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. At corner, they have Tre'Davious White. So that's a pretty good trio right there. So they definitely could, be one of the top. And they actually were towards the top, I should say, in passing yards allowed last year. So the credit goes to their safety duo and their corners, who are Tre'Davious White, known as, I guess, one of the top young corners in football. And then who was actually supposed to be just a slot corner coming out of LSU, so that's crazy. And they have Levi Wallace, who I thought should have been drafted last year. And he's been pretty impressive. Really their corner group can be better. That's what's kind of keeping them down a little bit. At this point, we got to start splitting hairs once you get in the top 10. Safety group really keeps them high. I like Tre'Davious White. Levi Wallace, he's solid. He's solid. They get Kevin Johnson, hasn't really lived up to the hype. Teron Johnson. So they did sign Captain Munnerlyn too, but he's kind of up there in age. But, I mean, they got a pretty good group there. They got a pretty good group, and that's why they're at number 9. We're on to the top 8. Talking about key players for the top 8 teams. They get the special treatment for being in the top 8. And I wish I could have listed more guys on this graphic, but we'll talk about them. The Tennessee Titans come in at number 8. The safety group is what stands out. The top, Kevin Byard, one of the best safeties in football, and Kenny Vaccaro. I thought he had the best year of his career last year, actually. I think people were a little hyped on him early in the career. He had a really good year last year. So the safety duo is really good. And the corners are pretty solid. You look at Malcolm Butler, and the other outside corner is actually Adoree Jackson. But I think a key player is Logan Ryan, who plays in the slot, and he can play outside. And they have other guys. They drafted Amani Hooker and Cruikshank. I like the potential of Cruikshank there for safety. He can also play corner. So it's a pretty good group, a lot of bounce, good rotation coming in. That's why the Titans come in at 8. Did not give up a lot of yards last year, too. Was towards the top of the NFL in yards allowed. Broncos at 7. A lot of depth here. Chris Harris, Bryce Callahan. Problem with those two is they're both mainly slot corners. I think Callahan will play in the slot. Chris Harris can play well on the outside. It's just a little risky me putting them up here, but I like the group overall. Justin Simmons and Kareem Jackson is a darn good safety duo. And you have Parks, who's a solid rotation safety. Sewell Craven's going to be a weapon this year. He's going to be a weapon playing safety, playing in the box, really playing a linebacker position. They're going to use him in the blitz. Isaac Yiadom from Boston College, I like him. He could be a starting outside corner. So, I mean, they got a list of guys that can really play here. So I like the rotation. I like the playmaking ability from the Broncos with this defense that we're expecting a lot from. Dolphins at 6. Xavier Howard, I think, is one of the better corners in football. I think he's the future number 1 right there with Jalen Ramsey. So I like him a lot. Minkah Fitzpatrick, I mean, you can put him at outside corner. You can put him at free safety. You can put him as a box safety, slot corner. He played slot corner for the most part last year. But any of those positions, and he's a very good defensive back and is on his way up. So wanted to list him. And then the safeties, Rashad Jones and McCain can play safety or corner as well. And they have they just released McDonald, which kind of shows you they don't, they don't really need. It was surprising to me, but it kind of tells you that they're confident in their secondary and it's good. There's no secret that it's good. Because they have the depth. Eric Rowe outside at corner used to play for New England. He's pretty solid. And they have Tankersley, who I think he's on the PUP list right now, but I liked him out of Clemson a lot. So yeah, they got quite a few guys for the rotation, and they got they're going to be up there in interceptions and turnovers because of guys like Howard and Fitzpatrick and Rashad Jones. So definitely a fun secondary. And to think about, they don't get any pass rush. They haven't really been getting too much pass rush. So they got to cover for a long time. So what they were able to do, man, you can even argue, the more I'm talking about that makes it more impressive because, the length they have to cover for, very impressive, very impressive. The Rams at number 5, very good corner duo in Talib and Peters. They also have Nickel Roby-Coleman in the slot. And then John Johnson III at safety, who I like a lot, Eric Weddle. And they drafted my number 1 safety in this draft class, and Taylor Rapp. Loved his tape. Perfect for him to learn behind Weddle. And they'll play all 3 of those safeties at once, too. They can come put Rapp up in the box. That's a fun secondary. So not much after those guys I named, but it's a really good group of, well, that's a lot, actually. It's a good group of 5 or 6 guys there. Depends on if they better use Rapp, because I like him a lot. So that is the 8 through 5. Round of the top 4 here. A lot of these teams are close, even 5 through 5 and 4, very close. The Bears are up here because the solid starters. Not too much of a rotation. That's what hurts them a bit. But the starters do. You do get a little more. Obviously rather have the starters there, and the Bears too. Eddie Jackson, one of the better safeties in football, with HaHa Clinton-Dix. I think he'll pick it up this year. It's the 3rd team in just a year, so that's not a good sign. Hasn't really been playing too well, but I think putting him with Eddie Jackson and putting him with the secondary really in this defense will make him better. And then the corner duo with Kyle Fuller and then Prince Mukamara, and then the slot corner is expected to be Buster Scrime, but they do have the rookie they like a lot too, Duke Shelley. So not too much rotation. Wish the safety depth was a little better. I like Tolliver for backup corner. Don't love him yet, but I like him. So not too much of a rotation and depth for the Bears, but a really solid 4 there, maybe 5 with their new slot corner. Number 3 is the Patriots. A lot going on with the Patriots too. Stephon Gilmore, who was the best corner in football last year, you can argue is top tier. J.C. Jackson is opposite him on the outside. I thought he should have been drafted, last year, and the Patriots stole him. And then he's a good outside corner, a lot of potential. The kid from Maryland, and they have the McCourty brothers. Jason McCourty played in the slot a lot for them, another corner. And then Devin McCourty, one of the better safeties in football. They don't have, I'm assuming they won't have Chung because of the off-the-field issue. But even without him, it takes a little bit of a hit. But they have Harmon, and they drafted pretty darn well, too. Joejuan Williams was one of my favorite corners in the draft, and they get him. Very lengthy corner, good in zone, in my opinion. So they'll use him outside, so a lot of big time players there. So they come in at number 3. The Vikings, another one. They have, I think, the best safety in football at Harrison Smith, but it doesn't even show what they got on the screen because they got a long list of players here. But Harrison Smith, known as maybe the best safety in football. Anthony Harris had a hell of a year last year, and the corner duo's been that way for a while here. Xavier Rhodes and Trey Waynes. And then they had Mike Hughes back, who was a first-round pick, was looking really good before he got hurt. And they have Jaron Kearse, who's going to play a lot. He's a safety and a box safety, played in the slot as well last year. Mackenzie Alexander is their slot corner. He's been very solid. Holton Hill suspended, but, they got a long list of guys that can come in. People always make fun of Mike Zimmer because he keeps drafting DBs, but I guess it's paying off for something like this. As long as the offensive line's finally set, we'll see. And then Baltimore Ravens, number 1, I think a no-brainer, really. Hopefully Earl Thomas stays healthy, but I think they have the best safety duo, Earl Thomas and Tony Jefferson, who's kind of a do-it-all safety. And then a long list of corners there for them. They got Marlon Humphrey, who's an up-and-comer, very impressed with his game last year, and Jimmy Smith, who I think has been one of the better corners in football over the last several years. I don't think gets enough credit. And then they have Brandon Carr, who, he plays a lot. He can be a starting corner if Jimmy Smith's hurt. Anthony Averett, who was a Bama corner a couple years ago they drafted. They just keep making sure they have the depth. Even Tavin Young's actually hurt, and I still have him up at 1. It's a very good slot corner. Even down the depth at corner, Cyrus Jones, I believe, can play. And then they drafted Amon Marshall from USC. I think he can play corner or safety. And then looking at safety, we talked about Jefferson and Earl Thomas. Deshaun Elliott, I think they stole him in the draft from Texas last year. Levine, Chuck Clark. There's a list of guys that have experience, can rotate and play. Some of those depth guys, some of these guys can be starters. I think going back to, I think that's why these two teams are the top two, really. I think their backups could be starters on other teams, the teams towards the bottom. I really do. The Ravens at corner, and I think the Vikings a little bit of both. I think Mike Hughes not being a starter is crazy, and then Jaron Curse. I think is going to be paid as a starting safety next year by a different team. The Vikings, unfortunately, will not be able to pay him. He's good. He's another Harrison Smith type safety. But the Ravens got those corners, just so many that can start on different teams. Very impressive. The Ravens always have the depth, and that's key. So even losing guys in free agency, they have the depth everywhere at defense. Even at pass rush, they wish they were a little better at pass rush. They're in the kind of people want them to trade for Clowney, but even though they don't have the big-time player, they have depth. They have a rotation. So impressive, very impressive. So let me know your guys' thoughts, who your top teams were or are, and plenty more videos to come. I want to get to, I have a lot of videos I want to get to. Season's about to start. We kind of got a strict schedule during the season. Hopefully you can join us for that. Subscribe, turn notifications on, but we're going to try to get to as many videos as we can before the season starts. I want to rank 32 offenses and defenses, do my final predictions. Those will for sure come very soon. So that's going to do it for this one. Thanks everyone for watching. Goodbye.